This is the nursery of Richie Plantations Limited in Kesee. The company is a service provider contracted by SADA to oversee the implementation of the mango project in Northern Volta. The nursery here looks very impressive, with vibrant seedlings waiting to be transplanted. But the story appears different on the plantations where the seedlings have been planted. This is the SADA mango plantation site at Kesee in Kesee. The 35-acre plantation has been cultivated by the community with supplies of input and support from SADA. About 80% of the seedlings here have withered because SADA has failed to provide mechanized boreholes as promised. The community members are worried because their efforts seem to have been in vain. They say the main factor affecting the project is lack of water.
Pipelines na sprinkler machines bi wo so a boy ama ye de gugu so saa kopem se ensuo ba beto ntina ne wo ho no fertilizer ne ade ne wo bi na ensuo nto a wontimi enche fertilizer.
At Ehiamanchine, also in the Kesee West district, we found out that a borehole had been drilled on one of the plantations, but it was not mechanized. Here, some farmers who planted early have very high survival rates, but say if they don't get boreholes, not all the seedlings will survive the dry season. The situation on the mango plantations got worse as we traveled into the northern region.
I'm Ibrahim Idrisu from Salaga. We were thinking we can overcome this work very well so that our suffering will not be useless. Taking care of 20 acres as 5 or 6 of us, you know, it's not a small. So we have to stop everything and started doing the work. Later on came to have it lost, because we didn't survive. Rain stopped, no water. When we have already transplanted in my farm over 1,000 mango seedlings, and they are all there dying.
He says the high hopes with which he took part in the mango project have been dashed by SADA.
Really, I was hopeful that we are going to be, excuse me to say this, we are going to be some people tomorrow, because if you have been given 20 acres of mango seedling, you can one day be, excuse me to say, you can be one day be a rich man, maybe, if the mangoes survive for you. And look at the situation where we are today. The mangoes are not surviving, so the suffering we suffered for about 6 months ago, it seems to be going useless.
In the Upper West region, Matthew Song Abu's Matco plantation is the service provider for the SADA mango plantation. After we had toured some plantation sites under SADA, he told us he foresees about 90% of the seedlings on his plantations drying up before the end of the dry season because of SADA's inability to mechanize the boreholes.
It's really dry, and it gets drier every day, so it can only get worse by the day. So by the end of the time that the rain start coming, I don't think we could expect more than 10% survival.
So why were the boreholes drilled but not mechanized?
The reason why the mechanization hasn't started for some of them, I can't explain. But it wasn't possible to have mechanized all farms. That one, it wasn't possible.
So if you couldn't mechanize it, then you shouldn't have planted, because you knew that if the rain stopped, there would not be any source of water.
At the time we were planting, we were convinced that they could be mechanized.
Gilbert Idi considered the company contracted to mechanize the boreholes has defaulted. Despite the concerns raised by the affected farmers, Gilbert Idi says the mango project is a success.
One, you have identified the farmer. One, you've identified the sites. Two, you have the borehole. Stamping has been done in that phase. You have taught farmers how to plant. So these are successes.
What was the ultimate goal of that project?
No, but that's what I'm saying.
Was it to see the mangoes alive, or to the attempt doing it? You've gone
through
all
all
the
processes. Let me give you an example. For instance, there are others who have gone through these difficulties, and we have learned from their mistakes and tried to improve on it. We're not the first to introduce mango planting.
When Joy News visited some private mango plantations, the story was different from those of SADA. This beautiful plantation you are seeing is the Matco mango plantation in Zang in the Kalio-Nadole district of the Upper West region. Matco is one of the service providers of SADA, and it was selected based on its expertise. Unfortunately, however, this is not what we see at SADA. So we ask what went wrong with the SADA projects. For Joy News, Manasseh Azure Awine reporting.
All right, we are back. I'm sure, say, but you can't simply understand. Say, even that individual now on share project, national, on diano, where quite offer so what diana sabrain, Bibia air costo, kama. Ubusa, say, now I didn't say basa. That's the question. I didn't know. I was say a basa. Miamia who do a coin in our manate. Echo share na chese idea ha adwin ye pa. Well, there can say ahomti juna ensiso aburo na nipa bi ni ma ya o manadwin se woni be dia na mese se director be sa match samfo yi na bi afi na obi atena se na o hwa obehu se say na akoso ene de ekoso yi efa eye SADA nsensema ya ka nipa binim su se bia ye kasa mana broso wo hwa SADA mango project Richie plantation on jumadi a woni di no enti no jumadi ni nyina eneni na hwe se seedlings yi eneni how Kesee aba ne se nsu a woni de begugu so na afi sika a woni be di juma nyina no aka sinsimu eno ho asem eno no but yentie se de be a betie ho ase ye bia na afi no bia ba yentie sama hodo a ekoso quickly mama kinkan eye ensensemi bi ansana yene eye impemfo edin from the Ministry of Information and Media Relations, cancellation of JIDA request for proposals. The Office of the President has reiterated that all directives on JIDA remain in force. The request for proposals to implement an ICT model presently being advertised by JIDA is therefore without authorization and should be withdrawn. The President directs the Acting Executive Director of JIDA to expedite action on the reforms contained in the initial presidential directives on JIDA to pave the way for implementation of models that will create job opportunities for the youth. And it's signed by Mahama Ayariga, Minister of Information and Media Relations. Mutala Mohammed, so I'm to deputy for the same ministry. Good morning, Mutala. Point is saying. Very well. Why this release in the first place?
Well, I think that everybody in Ghana, or those who are interested in happenings in this country, are aware of the problems that was engulfed with the operations of JIDA, i.e. some investigation that has actually been initiated to, if you like, investigate into detail. In fact, we are not even talking about investigation, we are talking about prosecutions that have actually commenced on some of the alleged corrupt practices that members of JIDA were engaged in. To that extent, the problem has always been the issue of the institutional capacity or the infrastructures in place that would see the operationalization of the models under JIDA. You remember that when the investigative committee that was instituted by the Minister of Youth and Sports to investigate the alleged corrupt practices in JIDA upon media reportage, in their recommendation have indicated that the JIDA is a very good program, but there's one challenge, and one of the most important challenges, has to do with the legal framework, which is non-existent. And government is ensuring that this legal framework is done. Cabinet has looked into it. In fact, the document is with the Minister of Justice and Attorney General for finalization of the document, and it should be onward submitted, to Parliament for approval if there needs be. So to that extent, government expectation is that every other model would be held at bay, so that when we finish with all these things, then there can be proper regulatory measures put in place to see the implementations of those models. So when the advertisements are being carried in the media His Excellency the President's attention was drawn to this. He gave the directive that no, everything should hold on. That is not to say that rolling out new models or models that we see that there's some positive impact in the life of Ghanaian youth in this country is not something that we encourage. That is not the case. But hold on, let's finish with all the reforms. Let's get the legal framework in place, and then after that we can begin rolling out models so that we don't come back to where we are today. If a program is being implemented and you have problems which lead to even prosecution of certain individuals, it is important when you are correcting them, you correct them, in absolucy. But let me also use this opportunity to say, because contrary to the views expressed by some section of the media and some politicians in this country, as if nothing is happening in Gida, when the investigation, the committee was instituted to investigate into the dealings of Gida, when they finished with the investigation and submitted their recommendations in the report, every single recommendation they submitted has been implemented. The government didn't say that we can't implement this. No. You remember when the reports were submitted to His Excellency the President, and he said he was consulting his advisors on the implementations of the recommendations by the committee. People said that, oh, you were trying to shield. And I remember I explained that the consultation was bordered on the structure of the program, how we can restructure it. But as to the recommendations, as those who are suspected to have been engaged in criminal activities, I think that you are aware that people are being prosecuted. And I think that this statement must be made and made very, very clearly that every single recommendation of the committee has been implemented. People have been prosecuted, including even my former boss. You have people who have been asked to pay money. You have models that have completely been abrogated. And I think that there cannot be any seriousness in any part of any government to fight corruption than what His Excellency the President is doing.
The President clearly, when he was assigning the acting executive director to GIDA, spelled out the responsibilities and role. So why would he go out of that responsibilities and role to introduce a new model?
That is another wrong impression that is being present out there. I have worked with GIDA for 4 years. Now the GIDA falls under the Minister of Youth and Sports. And if you look at the implementation of the models under GIDA, the implementations of the models under GIDA are different from advertisement that are there run. Models are implemented, they are processes. It is not just you just get up to the implementing it. Now, if there are institutional frameworks that are being worked out, and the head of GIDA saying that, look, let's do advertisement, prospective, if you like, investors who invest in it, or model owners would like to have those products. That's why we start the processes, so that as and when we get the green light, we wouldn't have to go through these processes, which will take months, so that we'll have, rolling out of the models as quickly as possible. I get the sense that that was what the acting executive director of GIDA was doing. I've worked with the program for 4 years. Before you even implement a model, you would have had the running and everything that would take about 3 months and sometimes 4 months before you can even roll out such a model. I believe that was it is not an issue of disregarding the directive of His Excellency the President. The intervention of the President in this case has to do with the wrong impression that it will create. Like you are asking, many people would misconstrue running models to be implemented, implementing the models themselves. And I believe that to avoid or to cure that mischief, there is a need for His Excellency the President and the government to issue such a directive, and that is why the directive was issued.
Well, Honorable Deputy Minister, I'm sure it's spelled out clearly here. The issue is to go and reform, but not to introduce. So clearly, if you go and you've not finished with your reform and you are introducing, it becomes contrary to the directive of the President. So nobody's being mischievous here. It is about what the President has directed the acting director to do, and he's going contrary to that.
I haven't said you are being mischievous.
I've never said so. I'm saying nobody's being mischievous out there.
I haven't said you are being mischievous. I haven't said anybody is being mischievous. I said it is meant to cure the mischief. And the mischief is the wrong impression that is created out there. And in any case, advertising before the implementation of models is completely different. In fact, it's absolutely different from implementation of models. And like I said, I'm not talking as a layman. I'm talking as someone who has worked with the program for 4 years. And I've indicated to you that to roll out the models, the processes sometimes will take about 3-4 months. Now, I am not in the mind of the chief executive. But what I'm saying is that based on the experiences I have had, as someone who has managed that program for 4 years, I'm saying that if you know that within this particular time we would have finished with the rollout, but mind you, the executive director is well aware of the progress made so far. Why not run adverts such that we will get people who are interested in getting into it? When we begin to roll that, then we roll that without any delay. That is the point I'm making. And assuming that everything is finalized, let's say tomorrow, and then you begin to run, or let's say next month, you begin to run adverts and people would apply, the committee would look into those things and others would take about 3 months. It means that for that 3 months or 4 months, young people who have been engaged wouldn't have the opportunity to be engaged. I am just saying that that could be, and I'm making this statement not in the context of the statement directed to you by His Excellency the President. I'm making this statement to make your interview and your interactions with me more informing because I have worked with it. And possibly maybe I should be seeking you a fee for consultancy. I'm making this statement because of the experiences I've had in it. And I'm saying that that could be one of the reasons why the chief executive would indeed issue or run the adverts that they have run.
Well, probably I don't know whether you've gotten time to go through what the advert really spells out. It's talking about 3 weeks. It will be through and the contract will be awarded. So where is the issue about 3 months or adverts keeping long because of processes? In any case, I'm sure after information, because of what we've experienced previously, it is not going to be a rush program. Due diligence.
No, certainly not. Like I've said several even on your platform that look, all the loopholes, the alleged corruptions and other things that indeed came out of this JIDA saga can be attributed to the inability of the program to be having a legal framework. If you survey, it was like a cabinet pillar. But once you have a legal framework, people are indeed restricted and regulated as to how they implement the program. So for me, it's sine qua non to the success of the program that wait a minute, let's get the legal framework in place before we do that. Be it as it may, the chief executive indeed has run those adverts in papers. His Excellency the President, who has the final and the ultimate authority as far as the governance and administration of JIDA is concerned, says, hold it, don't do this, let's finish this. I don't think there is any big deal about that.
All right, thank you. Deputy Minister of Information and Media Relations, all right, Mutala Mohammed. And what is here in Nakasana? Kofabai, Ghana, Yebeti Sada Nijida, Unsensemiano, Abrante Bako, or come out media, Jumakuno, Joy FM. To be precise, on the Kofabai, Abasubodi, the one in the Juma Oyan, when Abasubodi Pia, actually said, Adia Oyen and Amombia Otuno, Unim de Oye, and Unim de Oka. Manasse Azure, Yadasi P, so I did. Boko de. I don't know what the interest was overexposed to Ghana for a year, A2 and more, and say, Enfata, not Yadia bicycle, and your many quasi.
So we have some trade Jumana near Tichu Edi kind because we have constitutional. Say, my to me, say, or my day a bicycle, and as ye day to me a show monster say, or my sika dear sonne Puntu Jumano. And some telephone I also to me hena near also a month for a form when you my honor see to me hena. And my day, they don't so free one swa. Sabi me baby am afraid if no one so how we hiane ahokyere edoso ye pa eni said sa enyumakue ba se emwa na sebi omamoni bi no bibi kakra timi aba mo nsam na so na obi edisa sika na ye basabasa ya na ya kakra nti medjuma sensem training no ne edi kan me ye na mom se na obrani beka se me background no so anase baby am fini ne mafamu no toda na hu se enema bisa nkoyi na mitiminya waya obi e mu se o se mitimi hwena meboa e mai de nema to yi
ye medina JIDA ne SADA titu yenko SADA so na se mi hwemfunyi wo join news na mitie join news an kasa so a said the stories ni si ekeka sie ni afei na wo se ehukura ba mu se nti saade we nyina esi wo ha na se esi okuru foforo so bo entremu kakra SADA ni free he ana abedu he na de ensi nto anewom
sorry SADA na emra 2008 abato no na amko presidential debate bi otamale na we presidential candidate Kanema Mpeni Atamel so wanya ne ba bia akọ Acquah Nana for the MPP Kesee Domena Edward Mahama for the PNC na omunyina segment ni bi ni ebisa se eden kra no metumi na omudi mpuntu aba etifi afam na omukeka nsem pi na ehona Acquah Nana bo bibi se Northern Development Fund and Mills so can be Savannah Accelerated Development Authority. Nti say NDC wini na omodesa adiba say enki yenhwe na SADA no mese edwumakuo bia esi ho se mpuntu nyuma eba sa area no omehwe na makeka bom omodi yi ato yie na aban edika ma musika bi se omomfa nya edwuma na omugina sa sika no sa na sa nyuma no so edi atwetwe ne ebe kan investment na say afoforo mo wo sika se bia mo de beboa mpuntu dwuma wo SADA zone na Savannah region no na omode aba na be America kra ne beti I sen confirm semi by na enua bi ekodua ya yese eja ahye sa enua no entina me de to me ho so se mehwe na ensema ya tie to da ne efra SADA fo a omuso enua no be 20% ne wuye na omashase omudua edi agum confirm no say ne esi enti afimfi ase na meka se mehwe na ne a yete no se no kra
yakohwe na edwuma
yes and ye dikan ifa ye cameras na de eshase wo Ketekrachi Northern Volta so here SADA na bono hafumantam brown hafuna framantam your districts bia
e franka kranka
eka ho e was SADA zone nti ye shase free Krachi na ye ko from one community to the other farm na if you ho any ko northern region shase free Pandai Salga ye kodu Tamale ye fa Damongo sa kodu wa ye free wa ene fa tumusa ko bolga boku na sifo nyina nti ansane beba no na babia SADA nyuma ko no ye tumi akaba bebre ema ye de ani kohwe na mom no kra nyame anim ne yakuhu ya na enyefe ye hwe enua na omuso madua na ye wa na omuso kakra na ewu ye na eja na ehye but na eno nye no kra ye tumi ko emia bi a wotumi se enua na mudua ba kokora eni hawa yeden wetumi asaba che se enua ni nyina ewu enua nyina ewu ena babi a ye kan so enye se bia nsuo na ni ho ye babi a fre no boku tampielem se ofri boku ba o nifa so na se wo ye wura boku o benkum so na hwesa bia ho a ye wo we bia friends nsuo bi egu nsuo no eda babi a ye dua enua no but ye bisa so o medua enua no o man hwe kran fa nsuo na nguso o medua wie na o mogyae na o mokoye nti na ebesi ni se na ebewu na enso amoa mewe nso yeden o mowiye na babi sa okọ Kamina Barracks e Tamale ye dua
na sika na edi hye SADA mu
yes
ana ye ma ne kosa
yes and sa nua no sika ekom nyina ye 32.4 million Ghana cedis ye de ma construction company bi say ACI Construction Limited and nipa kra sa company ye ne de sa nipa kra na en confirm project nso ye de ma no aye Owura Rolanda Gambira aye RLG4 penny ono na companies nya ndie but ye hu ye ne se enua no antumi ansaba bi ne bisa SADA fo na also afa na mafa UDS so mo ngore but eno ne yeku hu ye na enye papa eno so free ho nso a ye obabi a enua ne bi ye dua ya na ensesenk ye dua enua ne wo ho they say bia okọ communities bi se wo free Tamale ba odru Yape de babu pe Damongo area mo ho de ba techimane ade a omomo enua no deda ntina nke ni se de sa enua ekoho but etimi ko hu ba bia ye se na enua no ho nti a mo ntimi enua no mo ntimi twetwa enua no bi ansa na mo dua enua no na nua mu twitwa no kra bi ne yefre na krenku ananse share nut a mo de enkuto ne ade no ye twitwa bi agua ye dua take trees na akasi anyasefo ene so fi on confirm no so
komo a ihia bre pa si ebitimi adi unfortunately say the one mejuwe wo ya o de bre and wapopo kakra che no ko ehu kakra to yeso ye je di so benya bra man na o twa ebisimi na watimi age bre yi ade nchim na ba eventi ye kwa na say ebinim say na montu a wutu no also de wo kan nyina enye saa ne tie omo so de adanse fufu e ba ntie de omo adanse ne wadanse no e kasi ani a na ama viewers ni na ahwede all kind of crowd all boy oh my god manase ya da sipi so well we dey enim say what was one kabazi uti pa yi fa che e brenti na me adma na o che besim no the air cost nyina na emu tu ko nyina obedo amaye e bra so se ko na Adom CJ e dey ago Kesee wonsem e dey bro